Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, and One Piece. What do all these anime have in common? You've read the title, so you already know. They are all shonen anime. But what is shonen anime? Well, shonen anime is anime targeted at young teenage boys, but in essence, it's so much more than that. These are some of the most popular shows of the world, and it's for good reason. A lot of shonen anime have very deep-rooted, fundamental story elements that define them as a shonen. Some of these story elements include a young male character lead going on a high-action adventure to try to beat a bad guy. This includes comically shouting the attack at them before they do it, surviving after getting punched in the face a billion times, and getting stronger and stronger by any means necessary, and using this power to destroy anyone who stands in their way. Well, Mob Psycho decides to differ a bit from these shonen tropes. After watching One Punch Man, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, 3 years went by until I finally sat down and watched the anime adaptation of Mob Psycho 100. And I gotta say, it's pretty good. Mob Psycho is a completely different type of story than One Punch Man. The same humor is still present, but the show has its own unique visual identity. Everything is so colorful and stylized, even in the most mundane moments of the show. It's almost like Spider-Verse in its unbounded imagination in its animation. Shigeo Kageyama, or Mob, is at the center of the show as he tries to find out how to get a girl, who he is, how to become popular, and who he wants to become in the future. Also, side note, he is the most powerful person on the planet. It is in this juxtaposition that Mob's most interesting character trait reveals itself. His psychic powers are a visual representation of his emotions. We see this through the ever-increasing percentage of his power throughout each episode, tying into his emotional state. It increases until it reaches 100. This is the point where Mob explodes. His explosion is caused by his emotions reaching its limit. He no longer can hold it in and it's released outwards. Except Mob rarely uses his immense power because of his sensei, Reigen. Reigen is a psychic con artist that has no psychic abilities. He appointed Mob part-time to exorcise actual spirits while he, well, massages the spirits away. Even though he may seem selfish using Mob to do his work, he only wants the best for him and genuinely cares. When Mob had no one to talk to about his psychic abilities and the insecurities that come with it, instead of shunning him, Reigen invited him into his office and told him the most important thing Mob could ever learn.
Listen. Just because you have these psychic powers and abilities, it doesn't mean you're any less of a human than anyone else. There are people who are fast, people who are book smart, and people with strong body odor. Psychic powers are just like that, another characteristic. You must embrace that characteristic as a part of yourself and continue to live positively. After all, the truth behind one's charm is kindness. So just be a good person. You got it?
Just because Mob has psychic powers doesn't make him any more special than a regular human being. We see Mob take this advice into action when he faces a boy in a rival school named Teruki, who thought that he was the only person in the world with powers. Teruki challenges Mob into a fight. Mob declines to fight back through his pacifist ideals set by Reigen, and says that these dangerous powers shouldn't be used on humans, but Teruki doesn't back down. He throws him into walls, pins him with his powers, and throws knives at him, and yet Mob doesn't budge. Mob tells Teruki that he is just like a younger version of himself. If you take away Teruki's power, then there's nothing of value underneath it. He is nothing without his powers. Mob's choice to not fight back is his way of actively contesting back against Teruki. He is showing him that these powers don't make him better. Mob understands the feeling of having that power and nothing else. He admires his brother, Ritsu, for being popular and having great grades even though he doesn't have any powers. But through the last few weeks, he has found motivation to improve and transform into a version of himself that isn't defined by his powers. Mob has been actively trying to transcend his abilities. He works out, meets new friends, tries to run a marathon all without the help of his psychic gift. If he can maintain his pacifist ideals and make Teruki give up, he will have won and gotten his point across that powers don't make you who you are. But if he can't control it, if he succumbs to his emotions, then Mob will be just like Teruki. a person that uses their power on people. The thought of his powers making Teruki not special terrifies him. He throws Mob into a wall and begins to choke him, trying to force Mob, beg Mob to use his powers, trying to make him fail. But Teruki gives out. Mob goes unconscious on the floor. Mob has gotten his point across. He has won. Until...
That's enough, I'm sorry! I won't do it again, please! I won't use my psychic powers against other people!
Mob failed to keep his emotions in check. He failed to change himself from his powers. As a result, in his own head, he has become just as bad as Teruki.
I completely lost.
Ritsu and Teruki, now a friend of Mob after their duel, are fighting for their lives. They are being relentlessly attacked. Seeing the dire situation, Reigen tells Mob to fall back, to not use his powers. Mob, blocking the voice of his sensei out, sees everything unfolding in front of him. His emotions are overwhelming him. His brain is on fire. Everything is going wrong. He has to use his powers. There is no other way. He has no choice.
I'm warning you, don't do it. In the end, you're the one who's gonna be suffering. When things go south, it's okay to run away and save yourself!
Run away? Mob running away? A person with limitless power running away from protecting his friends? To a person who watches Shonen Anime, this should be the point where the master tells his people to go all out, to use everything he has learned so far. But Reigen is telling Mob something else. He's giving something to Mob that Mob has never had the luxury to have. He's giving Mob a choice to run away instead of being forced to use his powers. Reigen realizes how bad the situation has become. A middle schooler fighting against adults that want to
unalive
him with full intent? If Mob goes through with attacking and most likely killing these people, he would be the one who suffers mentally in the end. Just like how One Punch Man subverted the hero's journey archetype, this is a subversion of traditional shonen anime. The protagonists in these anime are encouraged to use their abilities to the max, to keep on getting stronger to defeat their opponents. But throughout the story, Mob has intentionally decided to not use it on people. If he uses it, he is no better than the scum he is fighting. It is in this we see Mob finally realize that he had gone too far. If he had used his powers against these people, he would have not changed since fighting against Teruki. In all shonen anime, the master always dies teaching their people something. And in Mob Psycho, it's all the same. Sight, Reigen's the GOAT, he can never die, the greatest of all time, he is the best to ever live.